Scott just made the point.
Thomas Jefferson, you'll
seems to be a lot more secure, not just in our
Well, he's been saying it for years now. Polling genius and Democrat, parenthetically, Pat Caddell, has been saying that this year will be a revolution. Now, he's been tracking voter discontent for the past several years and is convinced, as I am and most political observers are, that this is going to be the most unusual election year in living memory. So let's bring in fellow revolutionaries Steve Green and Scott Ott to read the tea leaves before we throw them overboard out into the harbor. Gentlemen, Ted Cruz, the outsider's outsider, has just taken the Iowa caucuses from overwhelming frontrunner Donald Trump, and multiple felon Hillary Clinton eked out a razor-thin victory over ancient commie Bernie Sanders. But I don't want to play inside baseball today. We do enough of that on the show, and Steve did a great segment on that. I want to talk about a country primed for revolution, and I'm going to ask you both about two revolutionary scenarios which, through the power of logic, are in fact going to happen sometime this year. So round one is for both of you. The FBI is going to use forklifts to bring in pallets of evidence to the Justice Department regarding hundreds, if not thousands, of counts of felonious, treasonous, and power for money abuse by the Democratic frontrunner Hillary Clinton. So, Steve, one of two things will happen. If she's indicted, there'll be a revolution among Democrats, and if she's not indicted, there'll be a revolution among, law-abiding citizens. Can I get your take on each one of those two possibilities?
Before I do, though, let me throw out a third scenario, and that is if she is not indicted. The intel community looks after its own, and if Hillary really has gotten people killed, like former spy John Schindler thinks she has, or has certainly risked getting our people killed, then the intel community is just going to do what they can to torpedo her this summer or this fall. They don't play nice. They've got a lot of channels to work with, and a part of me almost hopes she doesn't get indicted because I want to see what they do. Just basking in my own little pool of 80-proof Schadenfreude over here in anticipation. As for the Civil War scenario, geez, no, you didn't say Civil War. You said revolution. Normally, you hope for a political revolution. That's why we hold elections. They're sort of institutionalized revolutions we hold every 4 years. The problem is we don't have a political class worthy of leading one right now. The closest two things we have are Donald Trump, who is his real talent, and I say this with respect, not with derision, his real talent, if he becomes the nominee and wins the presidency, isn't just tearing down the GOP establishment, which is just so riddled with weeds and cobwebs that it has to be torn down. And so a part of me wants that to happen. And then I guess you've got Ted Cruz, but he's such a red meat thrower that it's impossible to say how he plays politically. Can he get things done? So we've got two great unknowns on the GOP side there to lead that political revolution. On the other hand, you could have an actual, Civil War kind of thing. Let's not go into that dark place. But there's another option, and that is a sort of Italyification of the United States, and that is we just grow accustomed to the fact that our leaders are liars and cheats and frauds. They break the law with impunity. They do what they want to do, and we shrug and we go back to not paying our taxes. We go to doing all of our business underground where it can't be seen. The underground economy blossoms like it does in Italy. The official economy shrinks and becomes more hidebound and more regulated, and all the rest. You see it in Italy. This is how that country is run. It's sad. It's depressing, but you have a sort of Mediterranean shrug about it. That's the way it is. Wouldn't that be a sad thing to happen to this great country?
Well, Scott, same question before we go to round two. One way or another, Hillary Clinton's felonious actions are going to cause the biggest upset in the modern election cycle. So what do you think is going to happen if she's indicted, and what do you think is going to happen if she isn't indicted?
Well, if she's indicted, that's not revolutionary. That is staying within the constraints and the confines of the Constitution. That's the legitimate thing that should happen to her. Either there should be an independent prosecutor appointed so that we can get out of the whole political realm with this thing and keep it in the law enforcement realm, or there should be a grand jury empaneled to indict her. But one way or the other, even though that would be shocking, it would be huge news, and of course the New York Times, wow, you know how they are about stuff like this. They'd probably have it page one below the fold for a day or two. But That is not a revolution. That is the way it's supposed to happen. If she is not indicted, then I think the question comes down to how much do we really know about what happened, and that will be a gauge of what the public response to it is. I'm afraid that Stephen Green may be right about this Italification of the United States in a sense. He reminded me of the old movie Broadcast News, where at one point Albert Brooks is talking to Holly Hunter about this suave anchorman that William Hurt played, and says to Holly Hunter, Albert Brooks says to Holly Hunter, look, I'm sorry to tell you this, but Bill, I think that was his name, but who knows, is the devil. And she was shocked. She goes, this conversation is over. And he said, no. What do you think's going to happen when the devil comes along? You think he's going to be wearing a red suit with pointy ears and a tail and a pitchfork? No. When the devil comes in, what he does is he lowers your standards little by little until nothing matters anymore. And I think that's what politics has done. I think politics in many ways has given us such a disdain and a distaste for the whole mess that we say, you know what? They're all a bunch of thieves and scoundrels and pirates, and, let them have it. We don't even care. That's what I'm afraid will happen. When I say that, though, I'm very aware that it only takes one man or a handful of people to raise the cry and to rally people to really get involved in this process and get concerned and bring justice to the situation. And I'm more hopeful for that now than ever.
Okay, that'd be a nice outcome. Let's go to round two. And Scott, just to mix things up, we'll start with you this time. Either Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee or Donald Trump will not be the Republican nominee. Can you give us a thumbnail of the kind of revolution we can expect in each one of those two cases?
Well, once again, if Donald Trump's the nominee, I think we've already been through that revolution. And so he just steps into the perfectly sized shoes of Barack Hussein Obama. I think they are cut from the same cloth in their leadership style, which is, I'm right, you're wrong. If you don't agree, I can't wait around for you to agree with me, so we're just going to go ahead and do it anyway. And Bernie Sanders very much like that, too. Of course, what they say is, we're going to go over the heads of Congress to the American people, and, he'll go on a tour and make speeches, and stadiums will be filled, and he'll do executive orders that take long enough to get through the court system that he'll be long gone by the time the repercussions are felt. I don't really think it's a revolution to elect Donald Trump. I think he's another one in a long series of slimy politicians. I think there is a revolution if you elect somebody like a Ted Cruz, because Ted Cruz is a constitutional movement conservative. When he's talking, and you can see this online, I just posted this to my Facebook recently, he's talking to an Iowa farmer who's upset with him and won't vote for him because of the renewable fuel standards stand that Ted Cruz took, which is basically, we're not going to have this government mandate anymore, which is a subsidy to corn farmers in Iowa. Ted Cruz won Iowa standing against ethanol subsidies. That is a radical transformation. And what he's saying when he talked to this farmer was, look, I want a level playing field for everybody, which means no mandates, no subsidies, free markets. And we are going to take off the government restraints that now keep you from selling more corn than you might otherwise. And instead of trying to manage that market, we're going to get government off your back. If that starts happening, and we get enough Republicans elected with Ted Cruz, or at least in the next congressional cycle, we could see a real revolution in this country, and that revolution starts to look like 1787.
How about that? Well, Steve, for the chaser, again, I don't want you to speculate on whether or not he's going to be the nominee. I just want you to explain the revolution that will happen if he is nominated or if he's not nominated.
If he's not nominated, I worry. He's done a great thing, whatever you happen to think of Donald Trump, but he's brought a lot of non-traditional Republican voters, maybe not into the party, but at least looking at the GOP and maybe giving some of the candidates down ticket a look as well. And that's a good thing, no matter how you slice it, if you support the GOP or conservative politics or both. So if he doesn't win the nomination, the trick is I want to see Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio seem like the two likely alternatives to really work hard to keep those new people and bring them into the Big Tent. If you don't have a Big Tent, you got a big loss. That's just the way it works. You got to bring voters in. You don't build a winning coalition, as Stacey McCain likes to say, through a process of subtraction. You just can't do it. If he does win the nomination, look, maybe I'm cynical. Maybe I've been watching politics too long. But I expect him to build the wall with on the border, build the fence, whatever it turns out to be, with his crony construction firms using cheap imported labor. And then I expected the thing, after about 3 or 4 years, to be as worn down and shabby as any of his Atlantic City casinos. That's what I see. Sorry if I disappointed my Trump fans, but I hope I didn't disappoint you with the first part.
Well, let me just go through these 4 scenarios that we outlined just very briefly. If Hillary Clinton is not indicted, it is the end of the rule of law in the United States of America. These are not peccadillos. These are not misdemeanors. These are not little irregularities on filing forms. These are thousands of counts of treasonous abuse of power, of blatant disregard for the security of the United States in exchange for personal political gain. And if she is not indicted because the king decides not to, there is no rule of law left in this country. And as far as I'm concerned, you can do whatever you want to. And anytime you get in trouble or arrested, you just said, well, the president has committed thousands of felonies and they didn't even bring charges against her. If Hillary Clinton is not indicted, I think there will be a revolution among the law-abiding people of this country. I really do. If, on the other hand, Hillary Clinton is indicted, what is that going to do to the Democratic Party? There are people who have built their entire 30, 40 years of support around Hillary. I happen to think that they're going to bring Joe Biden in, and I am beginning to think that the deeper game here was that Obama and Biden both knew that Hillary was in real trouble. When Joe Biden dropped out of the race and fell on his sword, I am beginning to think that was a brilliant long-term strategic move, because if Biden had gotten in early, he would have split the party. He would have been coming in to usurp Her Majesty. It would have looked like vanity and all the rest of it. But they may have known the kind of trouble she's in. So Joe now is the good guy. No, I don't want to cause any trouble. I 100% support Hillary. She's the nominee. And then if Hillary Clinton gets indicted and goes down, then Joe has to be returned from his farm out in the countryside to come in and save the republic. So that's how I see the 2 Democratic revolutions going. As far as the Republican revolutions go, if Donald Trump is not the nominee, his supporters, the experience I've had with his supporters online, and it seems to be getting more intense every day, are so rabidly anti-Cruz, anti-Rubio. I think they take much of this from the tone of the candidate, if you really want to know. If Donald Trump is not the nominee, I think he will either run as a third-party candidate because his ego is so big, and he has said things like, I wouldn't lose supporters if I shot him on the street. If he's not the nominee, I would be astonished if he didn't run on a third party, pleased, surprised, and astonished. If, on the other hand, he is the nominee and he goes on to win the presidency, then the revolution is in effect. There's a term in computer intelligence called the singularity. The singularity is the point at which computers become so smart that they can design their own next generation of computers, which are smarter than humans, so that this thing accelerates. You've got a machine that's smarter than a person, develops a machine that's even smarter than a person. That high intelligence machine develops one even smarter. And we refer to that as the singularity because, like a black hole, no one can see beyond that. There is just nothing to see beyond that. If Donald Trump becomes president, it will be a different country. Much of that will be good. Much of that I worry about. But one way or another, folks, we are going to see fireworks this year, the likes I do not ever expect to see again, and the likes of which I certainly haven't seen before. For everybody here at PJTV.com, I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green Scott. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.